Every town has a place people avoid, but in my childhood neighborhood, there was one house everyone feared, the abandoned two-story house at the end of Birchwood Lane, even as kids. We knew something was wrong with it. The windows were always fogged from the inside. Even on hot days, the front door, though locked, sometimes swayed gently, as if someone breathed behind it. And every night, like a clock striking midnight, footsteps could be heard walking slowly across the creaking wooden floors, moving from one room to another, long after the last person in the neighborhood had gone to bed. For years, everyone assumed it was just the wind, or maybe rats, or maybe our imagination fed by scary stories. But deep inside, we all knew footsteps don't sound like that. They don't pause, turn, and continue like a person pacing. I never planned to go near that house again until last month, when everything changed. That night, I had been returning home late after visiting a friend. As I passed the lane, the abandoned house stood there like a dark silhouette against the moonlight, silent and lifeless. But then a faint glow flickered in the upstairs window, a warm, human light, like someone carrying a candle. Before I could convince myself I imagined it, I heard those unmistakable footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. Something inside me froze. But something else pulled me closer, a memory I couldn't fully recall. Like a forgotten voice calling my name from behind the darkness, I should have walked away. But instead, I stepped toward the rusty, half-broken gate, unaware that entering that house again would uncover something from my past, something I was never meant to forget, and that the footsteps I use to fear every night had always belonged to someone who wasn't trying to harm me, but trying to reach me. I stood at the broken gate longer than I should have, staring at the house like it might stare back. Even the air around it felt heavier, colder, as if the place carried its own trapped weather. My heartbeat thudded in my ears, louder than the crickets and the distant hum of street lights. I told myself I was only going to take a closer look, nothing more. But the moment I pushed the rusted gate open, it groaned like something waking from a long sleep. My breath fogged in front of me, though the night wasn't cold enough for that. A shiver crawled slowly down my spine as I stepped onto the path leading to the front door. The weeds brushing against my legs felt like fingers trying to hold me back. The closer I got, the clearer the glow in the upstairs window became, soft, flickering, definitely not the reflection of passing cars. Someone was inside. Someone who shouldn't be. I paused at the door, staring at the old brass handle. I hadn't touched it in years, not since the day I ran out of this house as a child, a memory I barely let myself think about. My hand hovered over the handle, shaking slightly, when the footsteps started again, slow, heavy. Exactly as I remembered. First across the hallway, then above me, then directly toward the edge of the staircase inside. My mouth went dry. This couldn't be wind. Couldn't be animals. This was a person. Or something that moved like one. With a deep breath that didn't calm me at all, I pushed the door. It opened easier than expected, like it had been waiting for me. A wave of stale, trapped air rushed out. Inside, everything was the same but older, dustier, broken. The wallpaper peeled like dead skin. The wooden floor, once polished, was cracked and twisted. The familiar smell of damp wood and mold was almost overwhelming. But beneath it, something else lingered. Something faint, like old perfume I hadn't smelled in years. As I stepped inside, the footsteps stopped instantly. The silence was absolute, thick enough to feel. I called out a shaky hello, but my voice sounded small, swallowed by the dark rooms around me. Then, from upstairs, a soft creak responded, one single, deliberate step. Not threatening. Almost inviting. My chest tightened. Someone wanted me to come up. For the first time in years, the missing piece of memory tried to rise in my mind, half a face, a shadowed figure, a gentle hand on my shoulder. Someone I once knew. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if I had returned here out of fear or because a part of me had always been waiting too. I placed my foot on the first stair, and an old familiar ache bloomed in my chest like a buried memory trying to rise before I was ready for it. Something important had happened on these steps long ago, but my mind still refused to open that locked door. As I climbed higher, each wooden step groaned beneath my weight, the sound echoing in the quiet house like a warning meant only for me. The faint glow coming from the upstairs hallway flickered against the peeling walls, stretching the shadows into long distorted shapes that seemed to twist and breathe with every movement. Halfway up, I froze. A soft humming drifted from one of the rooms above, slow, delicate, almost like a lullaby. My entire body tensed. I knew that melody. I shouldn't have remembered it, but I did. Someone used to hum it to me when I was small. On nights I couldn't sleep, someone whose face I could almost recall but never fully reach. The moment the humming stopped, an unsettling silence fell over the house, so sharp and unnatural it felt as if everything around me was holding its breath. I reached the top stair, my eyes locked on the partially open door where warm golden light spilled through the crack. Without thinking, my hand pushed it open. The room inside was empty, completely untouched, as if frozen in time. Dust layered every surface, the rocking chair in the corner, the shelves lined with forgotten toys, the small wooden table my father once made. Everything looked abandoned. Everything except the lantern glowing on the floor, its flame bright and steady. As though someone had lit it mere moments before I arrived, my heart hammered in my chest as I stepped inside. The air felt strangely warm here, almost familiar, and then I smelled it again, jasmine. A scent I hadn't encountered in years. My mother's perfume. But that made no sense. She was gone. She had been gone for a long time. I crouched beside the lantern, searching for clues, any sign of recent presence. There were no footprints in the dust, no shifted objects, no indication that anyone had touched this room in decades. Yet someone had been here. Someone who knew this house, knew my past, and somehow knew I would return. Suddenly, a soft thud echoed behind me in the hallway. I spun instinctively. A shadowy figure stood at the far end still, silent, watching me. I couldn't see the face, but I felt the weight of its stare like ice on my skin. My voice caught in my throat as I tried to speak. The figure didn't move closer. Didn't he retreat? It simply raised one hand and pointed slowly toward the room beside me, my old childhood bedroom. A rush of half-formed memories surged forward in my mind, pressing painfully against the darkness that had always kept them hidden. Before I could take a step or ask who they were, the figure lowered its hand, stepped backward into the shadows, and disappeared quiet and effortless, like a dream slipping away before morning light. My breath quickened as I stepped out of the glowing room and into the hallway where the figure had stood only seconds ago. The silence felt heavier now. As if the house itself was waiting for my next move, my childhood bedroom door was shut completely. Shut even though I could be sworn it had been slightly open when I arrived. A cold draft seeped from underneath it, brushing against my ankles like a warning. I placed my hand on the doorknob, and to my surprise, it felt icy, far colder than the rest of the house, numbing my fingers instantly. For a moment, fear rooted me in place, but curiosity pulled me forward. When I finally pushed the door open, a wave of cold air rushed out, chilling me to the bone. The room looked almost exactly as I remembered it: small bed tucked into the corner, faded wallpaper with cartoon moons and stars, a desk scattered with my childhood drawings. All untouched, as if sealed away from time. But something was wrong. The window curtains were swaying gently, though the window itself was shut tight. On the bed lay a small stuffed bear, my favourite toy growing up. I hadn't seen it since the night everything changed, the night I stopped remembering. Moving slowly, I picked up the bear. And an overwhelming sense of déjà vu hit me so hard my knees nearly buckled. I heard Echo's voices, soft, frantic, overlapping each other like distant whispers drifting across time. A woman's voice, trembling, a man's voice, firm, a child crying, and then footsteps. Loud, rushing, running up this very hallway. My heartbeat thudded painfully in my chest as I pressed the bear to my ear, not knowing why I even felt compelled to my horror. I heard something, an actual sound, a faint clicking noise coming from inside the bear, rhythmic, mechanical, like a tiny gear struggling to turn. I pulled my ear back and stared at it, confused and terrified. Why would a stuffed bear make that sound? My hand shook as I opened the back seam, just enough to peek inside. There was a device hidden within it, a small, old-fashioned voice recorder. My stomach dropped. Someone had hidden this in my toy on purpose. Someone who expected me to find it. With trembling fingers, I pressed the playback button. Static burst out first, loud and violent, echoing off the walls, then through the crackling distortion. A voice emerged, a child's voice, my voice. If you're hearing this, it means he came back. The room spun, my breathing stopped. I didn't remember recording this. I didn't even remember ever using a recorder as a kid. The static returned for a moment, and then another voice cut through, deep, harsh, panicked. A man, run. Don't come upstairs, he's inside the house. My entire body went numb, suddenly. The floorboards in the hallway cracked loudly, one sharp step. Then another. Someone was walking toward my door. My pulse pounded so violently in my ears that for a moment I couldn't tell if the footsteps in the hallway were real or just echoes from the recorder still trembling in my hand. But then another board creaked, slow, deliberate, heavy, and every hair on my body stood straight up. Someone was out there, someone who didn't care if I heard them. I lowered the recorder, slipped the stuffed bear silently onto the bed, and stepped backward until my shoulders touched the cold wall. The door to my room was still slightly open. A narrow strip of darkness between me and whatever was approaching. I held my breath. The footsteps paused right outside my door, and then, with agonizing slowness, the shadow of 2 feet appeared beneath the gap, blocking the thin sliver of hallway light. They weren't moving. They were waiting. Whoever or whatever it was had stopped the moment it sensed I stopped. My chest tightened with a fear I didn't know how to control. Then a soft scraping sound began, like fingernails dragging lightly across the wood of the door, tracing its edges, testing it. I clamped my jaw shut to stop my teeth from chattering. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But my legs felt like they were fused to the floor. The scraping stopped suddenly, replaced by silence so thick it felt alive. Then a whisper, low, raspy, right on the other side of the wood. You came back. My heart stopped. I didn't recognize the voice. It didn't sound like a memory. It didn't sound like a ghost. It sounded real and human and close enough to touch. I fought the urge to scream. Slowly, I glanced at the window behind me, wondering if I could pry it open, jump, run, anything. But the second my fingers brushed the glass, the whisper came again, this time sharper, impatient. Don't move. My breath caught in my throat. The doorknob began to turn, not fast, slow. Like whoever was on the other side wanted me to hear every metallic click as it rotated inch by inch. I stared at it, frozen, unable to tear my eyes away. Then, without warning, the house seemed to shudder, and the hallway light flickered. The doorknob stopped turning. The shadow beneath the door shifted, stepping back slightly for half a second. I thought the presence had left until a single knock echoed through the room. Calm and deliberate, once, twice, a third time. A chill rippled down my spine because I suddenly remembered something from earlier that I had brushed aside. The voice on the recorder didn't say he was inside the house. It said he came back. That meant he had been here before. That meant he knew this place, and somehow he knew me. Before I could process the thought, the knocking stopped. The footsteps retreated slowly down the hallway, each one purposeful, confident. When they finally faded into silence, I exhaled shakily, but then I noticed something terrifying. The recorder I had left on the bed had turned itself back on, and a faint whisper was playing. Through the static, "Don't open the door." For a long moment, I just stared at the recorder trembling in my hand, the whisper looping faintly through the static. "Don't open the door." My throat felt dry. My nerves stretched so tight it hurt to breathe. Whoever had been standing outside my room wasn't trying to force their way in. They were warning me, but warning me from what, or from whom? The abandoned house felt different now, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I moved quietly toward the hallway, each step slow, testing the floorboards before shifting my weight. The entire house had gone still, the silence pressing in on me like a thick fog. When I finally reached the doorway, I pushed it open just enough to peek out. The hallway was empty. But something was wrong, different. A faint glow, soft and golden, flickered from the far end of the corridor. I followed it cautiously, drawn by the quiet warmth in a place that had always felt cold and lifeless. As I approached, the glow brightened, revealing that the door to the attic, which had always been locked, was now wide open. My heart hammered, but something deeper than fear pulled me forward, something that felt like recognition. I stepped through the doorway, the old stairs groaning beneath me, and climbed into the attic. And there, in the center of the room, illuminated by a single flickering lantern, stood a man. His back was turned to me, shoulders slumped, as if the weight of years rested on them. I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could, he said softly, "I told you not to come alone." His voice sent a jolt through my memory, familiar, distant, painful. Slowly, he turned. His face was worn, pale, but his eyes were the same ones from the photograph in the stuffed bear, the ones of the man who had held me when I was small. My knees almost buckled as a long-buried memory hit me the night my father disappeared. Everyone said he abandoned us. Everyone said he ran away. But here he was, alive, haunted, and hiding in the same house people believed was empty for years. I stepped toward him, but he shook his head desperately. "No, stay back, they're listening." His voice trembled as he pointed toward the far wall, where a section of the wooden boards was cracked open just enough to reveal darkness behind it. "They come here every night," he whispered. "I stayed to keep them away from you." Before I could ask who he meant, the floor beneath us creaked louder than before, heavier, like multiple sets of footsteps rising from below. My father grabbed my hand, his grip trembling but strong, and whispered urgently, "You need to leave, now." But I didn't move, not until he looked at me with a broken, pleading expression and whispered the words that shattered me. "I didn't abandon you, I stayed to protect you." And then the footsteps reached the attic stairs. The moment the first step creaked on the attic stairs, everything inside me froze. My father's grip tightened around my wrist as the shadows below shifted, rising toward us with slow, heavy movements that made the lantern tremble. But then, just as the figures reached the top step, the train horn from the tracks behind the house blared through the night, shaking the walls and flooding the attic with vibrations strong enough to rattle the boards. The lantern flickered violently, and for a moment the entire room lit up with a warm, golden burst. In that brief glow, I saw the truth. There was no one on the stairs. No shadowy figures. No intruders. Only the echo of a fear that had been living in this house for years, feeding on silence, on loneliness, on the past neither of us had faced. My father exhaled shakily, as if the house itself finally released him. He stepped back from me, tears reflecting in the dim light. "You're safe now," he whispered, voice trembling with relief and exhaustion. "I can go." I reached for him, not wanting him to leave, not now, not after finding him again, but he only offered a small, tired smile. The kind a parent gives when they've carried a burden alone for far too long. "Just remember me." He said gently, "That's all I ever wanted," and before I could say another word. The warm glow washed over the attic once more, and he faded with it softly, peacefully like a shadow stepping out of the light. When it was over, I was standing alone in the silent attic, the lantern cold, the air still. But I didn't feel abandoned. For the first time, I understood the footsteps, the whispers, the warnings. They had always been him. Protecting me. Keeping watch. Waiting for the day I was strong enough to know the truth. As I walked out of that house for the last time, the night air felt lighter, the darkness no longer something to fear. And now, sharing this story with you, I hope it reminds you of something important, that sometimes the people who love us the most stay hidden in the quiet corners of our lives, but they never stop protecting us. If this story touched you, please support my channel by subscribing and tapping the bell icon so you never miss another mystery like this. Thank you for being here, and remember, not all footsteps in the dark belong to strangers.